right. Hi, everybody. It's Megan and Natalie. We're so excited to be here for our hour-long discussion about emotional abuse. You guys have been so wonderful with all of your comments and your questions and your interaction. Lots of people saying, hi, Megan and Natalie. Thank you so much for interacting. So as you all probably know, this is the beautiful Natalie Hoffman of Flying Free. She's an amazing person who is also a life coach. She's a survivor. She's an author of the book, Is It Me? And she also runs Flying Free, which is an incredible year-long learning experience for women coming out of emotional abuse. And it's very successful. So we feel really thankful and grateful to have Natalie here. She is also one of my precious friends, and nobody really makes me laugh quite like Natalie does. I just get so happy whenever we get to talk or chat or do something together like this. So Natalie, welcome. We're so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful little introduction. And oh yes, sorry.
We have our matching mugs for Flying Free today.
Mine was dirty. I had to quick clean it just for this. Okay, so how do we begin? I mean, are you going to ask me the questions, or should I look at them on my phone, or how do you guys do this?
Well, we can do it however you are comfortable doing it. I'll go ahead and I will pull up the questions here for you.
Okay.
Because there were so many. And Naomi, if you're watching, please feel free to send those to me as well, which I know you're watching actually. Okay, here we go. So the very first question was, how do you know when you are healed? Actually, before we do that, Natalie, why don't we go ahead and give the definition of emotional abuse and then go from there. How about that?
Okay. I had to actually look this up in my book because I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. But here's my personal definition of hidden emotional abuse. It is the secret, regular, and repeated cruel mistreatment of the inner emotions and heart of another person living inside of the same house. So, yeah. And you will always find emotional abuse in any kind of abusive situation. Emotional abuse is the foundation for all other abuses. And then sometimes you will also find, financial abuse on top of that, physical abuse on top of that, other kinds of abuses on top of that. But emotional abuse, if you have an abusive relationship, it will always have emotional abuse as an undercurrent that undergirds all of the other abuses. And sometimes relationships will start with emotional abuse and they'll progress into other kinds of abuses that are more obvious maybe to the outside world. But the reason why emotional abuse is so, when you just have emotional abuse, why that's so damaging is because nobody else can see it. You're the only one who can see it. And it's very difficult to describe to somebody else on the outside who's never experienced what it's like. And it damages, it doesn't damage your flesh necessarily. It damages who you are as a person, your personhood. And it does just, some of the damage is irreparable.
Natalie, yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry.
It froze for a second. You said some of the damage is irreparable. Is that what you said?
Yeah. You'll be carrying, you'll be carrying those kinds of scars. It's like if you were a burn victim, you're going to have burn scars, and they're going to be there for the rest of your life. You can try to have surgery to remove some of that scarring, but you're always going to be able to tell that you've been burned on your body. That's what emotional abuse is like. It's something that we will wrestle with for the rest of our lives. So I know there's a later question that talked about how do you heal from it, and is it up, do you ever get to a place where you're never triggered anymore? And I don't know, maybe I'll just dive right in and answer that question now since we're on it, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
And my answer to that is the only way that you would never ever be triggered anymore is if you never ever encountered a destructive person ever in your future. And the problem is that there are destructive people everywhere we go. They're in our workplace, they're in our neighborhoods, they're in our, there are dysfunctional people wherever you go. So, I mean, well, the whole world, the whole world is dysfunctional, right? So the fact that, there's no way that we'll never get triggered. But the idea is not get triggered. The goal is to, when you are triggered, to be able to manage those triggers in a way that is empowering to you, where you bounce back a little more quickly, where you can think about what's happening to you from a place of strength instead of from a place of where you just completely fall apart and you're a puddle on the floor and now you're no longer able to function for the next 3 days. We don't, that's what we want to heal so that we're not in that place. Okay. But triggers, yeah, you're going to get triggered probably for the rest of your life, unfortunately.
Natalie, let me ask you this. So if a woman came to you and she was describing to you what emotional abuse felt like, but she didn't know that it was an emotional abuse, what would the kind of the red flags be for you? So what I'm saying is, I felt so bad in my first marriage, but I didn't know why, and I didn't have the language for it. And so what are some of the things that you would recognize in an emotionally abusive marriage that might turn on some light bulbs for a woman who is just feeling so bad in her marriage?
Right. I think the main thing is that woman would be saying things that talk about how she doesn't feel like a person anymore. She doesn't feel like she is like her voice is valid, like her ideas are valid, like her opinions matter at all, like she as a person matters at all. She would be hitting walls with her partner as far as not being able to resolve conflict. I mean, the only way to resolve conflict is for her to step back and be a nobody, or to sort of be absorbed into his worldview, into his way of looking at things, his opinion. If you say, yes, I will go along with your opinion and my opinion means nothing, and then that will calm him down and he'll be like, yes, because that's an abusive relationship. When you cannot show up and feel safe in being just who you are, like if you're a cornball, you should be able to show up and not ever feel like you are shamed for that. You should never feel shamed for your body. You should never feel shamed for your ideas, for what your career is, for what you do. Those are all in a healthy relationship. Both partners just really respect and honor one another as human beings. An abusive relationship is not like that.
That is a great answer. Thank you so much, Natalie. And by the way, lots of people are saying hi to you.
Oh, hi. I can't see any of the comments, but
yeah, that really helps. So I think that for many of us, especially women who are just coming out, they don't necessarily have the language. Like you just gave us so much language for, what we are coming out of. Sometimes you just know you feel so bad, like you said, like not a person. And you don't know why. You can't label it yet emotional abuse, but that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and one other thing I'd like to add to that, because this was when I was trying to figure out my own situation, I was trying to figure out what is it that keeps happening over and over and over again. And there were lots of things that kept happening. Tracking the patterns in your relationship is really important. People will tell you, well, you can't keep a record of wrongs. But I say, yes, when you're if you think that you might be in an abusive relationship, you absolutely have to keep a record of wrongs because you have to see the patterns of behavior that are showing up in your relationship. So the number one pattern that will be present in every single emotionally abusive relationship is that they are always right and you are always wrong. And when I say always, I mean the vast majority of time. Once in a while, if they're in a really good mood and your opinion is sort of in line with theirs, they might give you that, just to, I always tell people it's like a worm on a hook. They reel you in with something tasty that makes you feel like they actually care about you and your opinion. But really the overall general atmosphere of your relationship is that they are right and you're wrong. And you can't resolve conflict unless you apologize for your opinion and say, you know what, my thought on that really was wrong. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have expressed that. You get to be right. Will you please forgive me for showing up? I'm being sarcastic here, but so anyway, yeah.
So that just reminds me so much, Natalie, of how lonely my first abusive marriage is, because you can't make a connection with somebody like that. If you can't be yourself, if you can't have valid ideas in front of them, if you can't, if you have to always concede to him, there's no real connection or intimacy. It's terribly lonely, which is very painful. So thank you. That really gives us a very clear picture of emotional abuse within a marriage. So that next question you were going to answer is from one of our mamas. She said, how do you know when you are healed? Okay, better question. What does the process of healing look like? How do you know when you are healing, especially when and if you are struggling with feeling worthless or less than? And she continues, and this is one of our newest mamas. How does a person go about erasing horrible things they've been told are true about themselves over and over and over, especially when the one who told you those things was also professing love and said their marriage vows? Oh my goodness.
Right. Well, at the very end, just because someone says marriage vows doesn't mean that they can keep them or that they meant them. People lie all the time. That's just, human nature for a lot of people. So marriage vows, if you can't show up in your relationship as a person, then they've already violated all of their marriage vows, and that marriage is, it's not a real marriage. As far as I think that this mother hit the nail on the head when she was talking about, that you feel like you're a non-person and you're invalidated and how do you get those voices out of your head? So the original question is, how do you heal, or what's the process of healing? You know that you have done some serious work and healing when you are able to, like, picture a fish swimming upstream. When you, like a salmon, those guys say swim against the flow, and they don't they flip flop their ways even up miniature waterfalls and stuff.
Yeah, they go up.
I've seen that on videos. I think I have. Anyway, when you are an emotional abuse victim or an abuse victim, you have no strength to swim upstream. You're dead in the water. All you can do is just sit there and just let the stream take you. When you have done some serious healing, you are what you believe. You are starting to, instead of being this ghost of a person, you are actually starting to put on a form and a shape and a color, and you are no longer black and white. You are in full color, and you are swimming against the tide of all of those voices that are telling you the exact opposite of who you are. And, some people, it's almost like you can picture this and you want it, right? And intellectually in your head that you can get it, but you feel like, I don't know how to make that light bulb go on so that it's not just intellectually here, because you can say good things about yourself, but if it's not here in your heart, it's like, well, it's not really effective to change your life then, right? So the idea is to get to the place where it's no longer intellectual knowledge, but where you just are really, I know this is true about myself and nobody can stop me. Let me just give you a quick illustration from my own life. When I was getting out of my situation, one of the things that's happened, and you've maybe experienced this, a lot of you, where it's not just your spouse that fights you. It's your friends and your family, people that you thought cared about you and loved you. All of a sudden now they're like, what are you doing? You can't get out of your relationship and you need to obey God and blah, blah, blah. And even your church. So my church ended up excommunicating me, but I had formerly friends that I thought were like, they were church friends. Okay. So they weren't, all of the friends that I had from, high school and college, they're all still my friends. But I guess these are like church friends, okay? They all started shunning me. They wouldn't even let their kids play with my kids. It was unbelievable. And I had to and it was so crushing. But when I could finally get to the place where I stood up and said, I don't want your help anymore. I don't care what you think anymore. I know who I am. You tell me that I'm not a Christian, that I don't know God. I know I am a Christian. I know that I have a strong relationship with Jesus, and I'm going to follow Jesus up the stream, even though all the rest of you are trying to drag me under and pull me back into your dysfunctional way of thinking. All of a sudden, I saw them, instead of putting them on a pedestal and thinking, oh, they're a church leader and I should fawn after them and, do whatever they say. All of a sudden, I saw them as the dysfunctional morons that they were. And I started seeing myself as I am a daughter of the living God. I am a queen in the eyes of God because of what Jesus Christ did. And from now on, I'm claiming that and I am walking in that reality. And it does involve rewiring your brain, which we do a lot in the Flying Free group, which we'll talk about maybe in a little bit. I don't know. But, and it takes some time. Okay. But, yeah, anyway,
Okay. So Natalie, you all can see me smiling right now and you see why I love Natalie so much. Everyone is like saying preach and yes and amen. And oh my goodness, that was beautiful. I love the full color. I think of a great big butterfly when you say that. And lots of people saying yes. And they're laughing at you saying dysfunctional morons. And we will talk about, I thought we'd talk about Flying Free toward the end here.
Yeah.
Around in about 40 minutes or so when we're done, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you guys know I have a very similar story, kind of to heck with all of them. God loves me. I am his child and no one can take that from me. Even if I make my bed in the depths of hell, he is going to be there with me and nobody gets to speak against that. So amen, sister. That was amazing. So thank you. Okay, so next question. And this is actually for both of us, Natalie. So you guys know Natalie is remarried to a wonderful man that she loves and he loves her and he's great. So the next question is, how do you even begin to date after emotional abuse? How do you know that he is safe? How did you and us two, know that he was the one? And then hashtag I have trust issues. So I'm going to let you start with that and then I'll go ahead and give a little answer as well.
Okay. Well, I was in the middle of a long drawn out divorce when I connected with Tom. And I wasn't looking for a dating partner. In fact, I wasn't, I don't know what would have happened if I had gotten divorced and I had been single for a while. And then, I have a lot of kids. I have 9 kids and my youngest just turned 7. And some of my kids are, they have special needs. Okay, I've got a borderline personality disordered older child. I have an autistic child. I've got a garden variety of other issues. But so I don't think I ever would have gone out actually to look for another partner until my kids were raised, because I really have a lot on my plate. Mm-hmm. God had other plans though. So, and I bumped into on Facebook my current husband, and we knew each other in grade school. So I've got a picture on our refrigerator of our class in 4th grade, and there he is, and there I am. You know, we look funny, 1970s. And so we knew each other back then, and we just bumped into each other on Facebook and started messaging back and forth. And I actually thought he might be gay because he was single. You know, he was an athlete in high school, but there was no pictures of any girls, but he has a lot of guy friends, and it turns out that they're all married, so he's not gay. But at the time I thought, well, maybe he's gay, you know, and I was actually praying that he was. Please let him be gay, because he's so nice to talk to. And I just wanted to have a friendship with a guy at that time that was without all of the without that potential for it turning into anything. I really didn't want it that at that point. Plus, I was still in the middle of my divorce, but turned out that he wasn't gay, and we did end up forming a friendship. So I don't know, I would say I was very leery of him, but because it was just a friendship and there were no strings attached and we weren't dating, we were just talking on the phone. Well, eventually it turned into that, and just getting to know each other as friends. And did I start wondering? Yeah, I started wondering if this could be something down the road, but it happened so slowly that it just kind of happened. And I just ended up trusting him because he's really actually a very trustworthy person. Was I looking for red flags? Yes, I was looking for red flags. I actually asked him a lot of really hard questions. One of the questions I asked him at the very beginning was, is there anything that you've done that you're ashamed of in your life that you wouldn't want to tell me? And would you be willing to tell me what that is? And there was something. And he did share it with me. And I just thought that was he was very vulnerable right from the get-go. And also everything that I shared with him, I felt very safe with him. So I don't know, it just kind of evolved. If I was going to be doing the online dating thing, but we actually, in the Flying Free group, we actually have we've actually talked about that with people who've done that. They've given their tips and tricks for how to navigate that whole thing. There's a whole course in Flying Free. We're going to talk about that at the end, but there's a whole course in Flying Free all about dating and reestablishing, getting into a new relationship. So there's a lot more to that I could talk about, but that was my experience. And I have a feeling that was kind of your experience too, Megan.
Yes, it was very similar to what you just described. I also, and I'm not going to take too much time because I really want our mamas to hear from you, but I asked hard questions, and I took much longer to trust David than it took him to trust me. And the fact that he was incredibly patient with me in that area helped me to trust him more. Because he wasn't rushing me. And I think that's really important. I think that instant intimacy is always a red flag. And I also think that I've kind of thought about this because I get asked this now and then. How do you trust again? How do you? I happen to know David already. I knew him. He actually dedicated my 16-year-old when he was born. So I had that foundation as well. Or else it probably would have been a lot harder for me to trust him. But what I generally tell our mamas is give 1% and see what he does with that 1%. And if he's careful and responsible with that 1% of vulnerability, give 3% and then watch. And so and then eventually, and it takes a lot of time, and that's fine, because if he really loves you, then he will take that time. If he really cares about you and sees your value, then he will do that. So that's generally my advice, is to take lots of time and then be a good steward of your vulnerability, giving just a little bit, and then watch how he stewards that. So that's my answer to that.
Can I just add a couple of things? Because as you're talking, I'm thinking of a couple of things. Yes, remember that emotional abuse is when you can't show up as a person. Okay. So if he wants to get in your pants, then you're not a person in that situation. I'm sorry, but you're not. I mean, sex is great, but that's not who you are. And you want him to be into you as a person, not into your body parts. And then so my advice then is to show up who you are. Don't be afraid to be exactly who you are. That's why it's kind of important to know who you are before you go into that relationship, so that you are able to show up. And then I just read this morning. It was a CEO. It was Charles Schwab. He was talking about how he vets future employees that are, and one of the things he does is he takes them out for breakfast, and he has prearranged with the people in the back to mess up the order for that other person, because he wants to see what that other person does when their order gets messed up. Mm-hmm. And you could do that. And here's the thing. If depending on what the other person does, that will tell you one thing. But then when you tell them, you know what, I was testing you. Later on, you can say, I was testing you. If they don't like it that you were testing them, run. They have to be okay with the fact that you're testing them, because they have to see that you're a person. They have to understand things from your perspective and why you would test another person. And a narcissist or a disordered person or a person who's self-centered and not interested in you, but only interested in them, they are going to be so offended that you tested them. And even if they try to, be careful about it, you will see their offense at that. And then you're going to know they're not a good person. And I don't care if they're good looking. I don't care if they have a great body. I don't care if they have a lot of money. They're not a good person. And if you stay with them, you are going to just end up right back where you started from.
That's right. Anytime a man expects for you to fully give him your trust, that is big red flag right there. Yep. That's not okay. That's not how we function. That's not how healthy people function. We earn that trust.
Yep.
And he needs to be okay with that. But this is a perfect segue, Natalie, into the next question. It's how do you find or discover your authentic self? And actually, you guys, I'm going to be speaking about this on Monday in Natalie's Flying Free group. So I might, since this is a question coming up, and everyone's thanking you for advice, Natalie, great advice. So I wonder if I can also do this same talk with you guys on Monday. But still, Natalie, if you'd like to go ahead and address that, there are a few more questions after. So she says, how do you find or discover your authentic self? How do you know if things are affecting you from your own childhood hurts? Oh, these are a lot of different questions, so they're not related. So we can just start with the first one. Sorry.
Okay.
How do you find or discover your authentic self?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you are a very complex human being. Okay. And one of the things that I have explored this last year and learned about, it's called internal family systems. And it's all about how you have lots of different parts inside of yourself. Have you ever thought to yourself, well, there's a part of me that, that really loves to, go to a party and interact with other people. But then there's also a part of me that is fearful about that. Okay. And have you ever wondered why, or you go into a situation and you feel like in one situation, you can be really outgoing and you seem to just come out of yourself. And then in another situation, you feel really intimidated and you feel kind of shy and you're like, which one am I? Am I the outgoing sanguine type or am I the shy introvert? And the answer is you can be a little bit of each. There's different parts inside of you that feel different ways in certain situations. So how do you discover who you really are? I think a lot of it is going back and journaling is so healing and so important. If you can't afford a counselor, journaling will actually help you get the stuff that's out of you. You can actually self-heal. All right. You can validate yourself. I tell people all the time, you've got to be your own self-advocate. You are your biggest fan, even though, you might be your biggest enemy right now, but you have to make yourself your biggest fan and your biggest supporter besides God. Okay. But guess who God appointed to be your biggest supporter besides himself. The number one human on planet Earth that is appointed by God to be your biggest supporter is you. You are responsible for you. You're responsible to care about yourself. You're responsible to take good care of your body. You're responsible to take good care of your spiritual health, your mental health, all of that. Nobody else has been appointed that in that role. God's appointed you in that role. It is a satanic lie when people say, oh, you shouldn't really take care of yourself. You should take care of everybody else. No, that is the exact opposite. That's a crossing of boundaries. That's saying you're responsible for everybody else and what they do, but you're not responsible for you. That if everybody in the world took responsibility for themselves and stopped meddling in the lives of everybody else and viewed everyone else as a responsible human being who could take responsibility for themselves, this world wouldn't be planet Earth anymore. It'd be heaven. That's that's heaven. Okay. But unfortunately, we're on planet Earth, but we can still get some healing for ourselves and that whole thing gets into boundaries, which I think someone else had mentioned the boundaries thing. But okay, so how do you find your original or your authentic self? Go back and start writing about what you were like when you were a kid. Take out all of the things that kept you, let's say that when you were a kid, you loved to sing, but your family of origin told you, you'll never be a singer and you'll never do that, this and that and the other thing. But those were the things that you felt wired to do. Or that maybe you love to draw or you love to express yourself creatively. Or maybe you were super outgoing, but were bullied so much that you got really insecure. But really, deep down inside, I'm a pretty outgoing person, but I'm scared because of these things that happened to me. See, who you are is not the things that have happened to you. It's who you are deep down inside. That's the person that you want to actually bloom and blossom into and feel comfortable. You've heard the saying, I'm comfortable in my own skin, or she's really comfortable in her own skin. You want to be able to be comfortable in your own skin. And it shouldn't matter what your body looks like or what your face looks like or what your hair looks like. It's like, I am comfortable showing up here. I'm going to show up in all of who I am. And also, it's okay if I make mistakes because I sometimes make mistakes. I can be a ditz head sometimes. Megan and I were talking about how we're forgetful. I have to write everything down. I don't remember names very easily. Some people might say, oh, you're so selfish. You don't remember my name. Well, maybe I am selfish. You know what? I think I am kind of selfish. Actually, I can be very selfish. And you know what? That's who I am sometimes. Sometimes I'm selfish. And so just to be okay with who you are, the good parts about you and the weaknesses that you have, and to always be like, well, I do have weaknesses. I do struggle in certain areas, but I'm working on those things and I'm growing. And if someone shames you and says, you're so this, or you're so that, or like, for example, recently I did some spoofy things on Facebook that were kind of mocking Christian leader gurus who really use the Bible to just kind of beat women up. And I was kind of mocking them and making fun of them. Well, I did get some flack for that. People saying, you're such an angry person. We can just tell that you're an angry person and you're a bitter person. And I would just, my response is, hell yeah, I am angry. Just own it. Who cares? Yeah, I'm angry. I wouldn't say that I was bitter because I don't think bitter people can laugh a whole lot. And I laugh all the time. So I'm not bitter. I have to say, I don't agree with you that I'm bitter. But I agree with you. I really am angry. And why aren't you? How come you're not angry? So I don't know. I would not be, I'm just trying to tell you that's how I approach things now. If you had caught me 10 years ago, I was a completely different person. I wasn't who I was. I wasn't who I was, who God wired me to be. I wasn't showing up as that person because I had to show up as a completely different, I had to be perfect. I was easily shamed. I easily believed other people's opinions. I was a nobody, and I was ashamed of who I was. And so I hid. And what I want for all of you is to be able to show up and be okay with yourselves, even if other people, this is the key, even if other people are not okay with you, you are okay with you. And you know that God is okay with you. There's a book, Women, I don't know, some of you guys are moms. If you have a chance to buy this book, if you don't already have it for your child, for their birthday or something, there's a book by Max Lucado, a children's book called You Are Special. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That book was profound to me even several years ago. It was really kind of one of the first things that got me started thinking, I really care what other people think about me. And if they give me stars, then I feel good about myself. And if they give me dots, this is part of the book. If they put a dot sticker on me, that's like bad. Then I feel shame. But there was one character in the book where it didn't matter if people put stars or dots on her, they just fell off. Mm-hmm. She was just fine with who she was, and it didn't matter what people thought. So I have no idea what the original question was, but
okay, I think it was great. I think that was just perfect. And I think that's so interesting about the book, because I remember where I was holding a baby. I don't know which baby it was, and we had the book, but we also had the movie about the Wemmicks, You Are Special.
Yeah.
And I had never seen it, and I was showing my little boy, and I started bawling. I mean, I was just weeping as I watched it, and my sister was there, and she said, "What's wrong with you, Megan?" It's a kid's movie. But it was so powerful to me, and I felt that there's such a good message in that. So yeah. When I first saw your blog years ago, you said, "I'm just a Wemmick who da 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 da," and I knew exactly what you're talking about. So lots of people praising your spoofy videos in the comments. They love them, and other people joining in and saying that they cried at that book also. So there was something I wanted to say about, so somebody made a comment, Natalie, about how the theology that we learn in conservative circles talks about how you need to die to yourself, and it's very contrary to what you just said. And so what I'm going to say to that is, we are misinterpreting that scripture. When Jesus talks about dying to yourself, it is for a purpose. You know how in scripture there are threads throughout all of scripture. The themes are the same. We can't take that one verse out and say, this is what this means. Jesus talks about the seed going into the ground and dying, so that what? So that seed can become what it was meant to be, which is, I don't know, a beautiful stalk of wheat, a beautiful plant, a beautiful flower. So when we die to ourselves, y'all, that is because we're going to actually become who we really are. Yes. That is God's way of telling us, put that away, put that shiny, pretendy, fake, kernel of corn, let it fall. Let the guts spill out. Be in the darkness for a little while, and in doing so, you're going to become something so much more beautiful. You're going to become what I meant for you to be. So that's that whole butterfly, that Natalie talks about, the whole butterfly analogy. That's what we're talking about. We're not saying, oh no, don't serve people, or don't, it's let yourself be who you are for God's glory by dying to the shell.
Mm-hmm. So, I love that. I'd never thought about it like that before. That's great. I'm going to remember that. Actually, I probably will forget it.
That's fine.
No, I'm going to remember.
Okay. So, we have so many questions. All right. Let me see here. All right. So this is about kids. How do you handle kids when they trigger you and evoke the same feelings that the abuser did? That's a very good question. I actually have a blog post that I'll post on our page about that, but I would love for you to answer that, Natalie.
Okay. Well, that's a huge question. I mean, um, I don't know if any of you guys have a child like this, but I think it's more common than we might realize. But I have a daughter who's actually been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She's an older child. She still lives with us. And we're talking, she's been like this her whole life. She's violent. We've got police involved. We've got Dakota County Corrections involved. We have Dakota County Mental Health involved. She's been in therapy for years and years. And our family is regularly, like daily, when sometimes she's with her dad and we get a break like this weekend. Woo! Mm-hmm. But our family is regularly traumatized by her. All the kids are traumatized by her. And then I also have other kids who don't have anything like that, but they just, they're your typical preteens or teens or even grade schoolers. And they've picked up on things that they've been immersed in this environment their whole lives. Well, not my younger kids, because I got out, 6-7 years ago. So they're pretty, they actually don't know as much as my older kids do about that, but they still spend some time with their dad, and they have picked up mannerisms and they've picked up stuff by osmosis, by being in that kind of environment. That, passive aggressive behaviors, manipulative language. And yes, it's very, very triggering. So I think, I can only share with you some of my own, some things that have helped me. There's a couple of really good books that I recommend. One is John Gottman's book. It's called Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. I think that's what it's called. And then the other book it's called Beyond Logic, Consequences, and Control. And I can't off the top of my head remember that author, but Megan, I don't know if you put little links, but you can look that up on Amazon. I know it's called Beyond Logic, Consequences, and Control.
Can you tell me again, Raising an Emotionally
Intelligent Child.
Intelligent Child. Okay.
Yeah. So those are great books. So those books have helped. Plus, because of my other daughter's stuff, I've had to go through some parenting classes. So, which have been really helpful, because prior to this, I was immersed in a church environment. And, the only parenting classes that they had were like Growing Kids God's Way and stuff like that, which, yeah. Or like To Train Up a Child by the Pearls, those are the kinds of books that I read. Okay. Yeah. So I did everything pretty much wrong the first time with my older kids. I've got like two families. I've got a set of older kids and then a set of younger kids. So, the idea is to be a good listener and to ask good questions of your children and to separate yourself. Again, it's really what it is it's learning how to show up as an individual person and not to see your children as extensions of you or as extensions of their dad. They are their own individual people, and you are your own individual person. And some of the things that they do to you are going to be just what normal kids do. But your job is to be their parent, not to be, emotionally entwined with them, or what's the word? Enmeshed. Yeah. And that's hard because you're trying to get healthy and stuff, but it's a motivation. So it's a good motivation to try to get healthy yourself. Again, the more that you can flesh yourself out and show up as your own person, the better you're going to be at modeling that for your kids. You want them to show up. You want to teach your kids good boundaries. You want to teach your kids how to be emotionally intelligent. So one of the things, so here's some practical ideas. Okay. You want to listen to your children. Your children are going to want to vent about things, and they're also going to blame you. Remember? I mean, this is what it is to cross boundaries. Instead of taking personal responsibility, you blame other people for your problems. And when they blame you, that's going to trigger you because you got all the blame in your bad relationship. and you got all the blame. Your family blamed you, your friends blamed you, your church blamed you, everybody blamed you, and you've took on all of that. The fact of the matter is that how could it possibly be your responsibility for all of these people? No, nobody's responsible for everybody else in their life. You're only responsible for yourself. So when other people say, I've got this problem and it's all because of you, that's just a lie. They're believing a lie. Don't buy into that lie. They've got a problem with that lie. It doesn't have to be your problem with that lie, though. This is where it's important to just rewire your brain so you're believing the truth instead of believing all these lies. So listen to your child. Sometimes my kids will come home from their dads and they will vent about I think there's another question that goes into this. So we're kind of blending questions a little bit, but they'll vent about something that happened with their dad. You don't have to go, join them in yeah, your dad really sucks and he blah, 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 blah. You don't have to do that because that's kind of disrespecting yourself too. And you want to be the adult, all right? Your ex-husband is a child. You are the adult. Even if you don't feel like an adult, you got to show up as the adult and keep telling yourself, I am the mature and responsible adult here. So I'm going to, picture someone. I've heard this exercise is actually helpful. Picture a character, maybe in a movie or a television show that you watch that you really respect and admire. Right now I'm watching The Good Wife. I think it's on Amazon Prime. The Good Wife, Juliana Margulies or whatever. I can't remember her name. Anyway, she's badass, but she's also super compassionate and loving and I really, really admire her. Okay, so I'm picturing her in my mind and I'm thinking, how would this woman show up in this situation? That's how I am. I'm going to show up in this situation like she would. So start imagining yourself as being, the adult, as being the self-controlled, as being wise, because you are all those things. You just don't feel like it. And as you show up like that more and more and more, you'll the feelings of being that kind of person will start to follow. So, and you're going to make mistakes. But anyway, back to so your kids are coming home and they're complaining. You just be a good listener and always ask them, how did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? And get them to talk about, get them their eyes off of the experience and onto how it made them feel. So that because what they desperately need in that moment is what you desperately needed when you were being treated like crap by the same child, by the same big bully child. You needed someone who listened to you and saw what you were going through and said, wow, I see you and what you just went through. That is really frustrating. Or I can see why you'd be angry. That would make me angry too. Or, that would make me cry too. I would be super sad. I would cry. That would make me go hide too. I understand why you did that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's all it takes. You can actually feel your child, the tension. You can actually feel it draining from their body if you're holding them, and they just kind of relax into you and put their head on your your shoulder, and you can just feel them letting it all out. Sometimes that's all they need. And then other times they might want to talk about it a little bit more, but I think that's one of the most important things you can do. What if it's you though? What if you're the one that they're blaming? If you can always remember to stay non-emotional, like you don't have to be emotional in your empathy for them and find a connection with them. So again, I can understand why that would make you upset. Or are you saying this and reflect back, or I think this is what you're trying to tell me, and repeat what they're seeing from their perspective. All right. This is called empathy, when you understand someone's situation. But then you bring it back to being a mom though. And you say, even though I can understand why this is hard to hear no for this, I have reasons why I have to say no for this. But how about if we do this, or, and try to redirect it? Now, there are going to be times you are going to have to get comfortable with tolerating their disapproval at times. Okay. Because nobody likes to hear no, and kids don't like to hear no. And they're going to, blame you because they can't have fun doing this thing or whatever it is that they want. And so you're going to have to get used to it. Part of being an adult is tolerating the disapproval of others, tolerating the disapproval of your church, tolerating the disapproval of your friends, tolerating the disapproval of your kids. Okay. Whenever you can say yes, say yes. But there are going to be times when you can't say yes. And you're just going to have to tolerate the fact that they're disapproving. Did I answer that question?
You did. You answered it beautifully. And I am wondering if anyone else is just as amazed as I am at Natalie's navigation of parenthood with these two separate sets of kids that she's talking about, and all that you've worked through. It's just tremendous. It's amazing to me. So we have another question here. It's a little bit lengthy, but I think it's really important. Any suggestions on how to become better stewards of our vulnerability? I feel like a walking open wound and a social leper, oscillating between over self-protection and oversharing. So it sounds like we've got floodlighting or no lights. So desperate for connection, also reeling from so much slander, too hard to balance, feels harder to heal amidst the feels harder to heal amidst the overwhelm combined with the isolation, but I feel like I'm not fit to socialize, still hurting, too much, too unhealthy. How to navigate this season. So I know this mama, and I know that she does struggle with this. So it's either a lot of open sharing or withdrawal. So that's where she finds herself right now.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that it's important to see relationships like concentric circles. So there's an inner circle of people, and then there's the next layer and the next layer. Can you see me making those circles in the?
Yes.
Okay. And so they're in the inner circle, you're going to have at the most 2 to 4 people. Okay. It's okay to just have one person in that inner circle. But, you might have, like, I'm trying to think of my life. I know I have my husband right now, but before, when I was single, I had my sister. She was the only person in that inner circle for a while. And that was okay. Then I had the next ring out. They were also people that I really trusted, but I did not talk to them on a daily basis. I didn't dump a whole bunch of stuff on them. When they asked me how I was doing, I would share some things more high level, and I knew that I was safe with them. Okay. But I didn't contact them on a regular basis to dump. The next circle out, there's going to be more. And by the way, each circle out, there's going to be more and more people in those circles. Okay. The next circle out would have been people that still liked me, but they still supported me. They weren't shunning me or anything, but they weren't really people that I would talk about much of anything to. Okay. But I knew that if I saw them in the store, I could say hi and talk lightly about, I knew that they weren't going to go, oh my word, it's Natalie, got to run the other way. I knew they weren't going to be like that. So they were safe people. You could go to a social situation and you were safe making small talk with them. And then there's, and then it just goes out from there. So what I would suggest is, when you're in the middle, the thick of the transition between your old life and your new life, there is going to be a time of isolation. Okay. Because this is what I call in my article I call this, you're going into the cocoon. But you know what? That's where all the transformation takes place, is in that cocoon. So when I think back on my cocoon time, it was a long time. It's probably 2 years. And I did tons of crying in the dark, in my bedroom, in my bed by myself. And when I didn't, some people have a hard time crying because they feel so numb. So what I would sometimes, because I would be more that kind of person. So what I did is I would put on super sad music. If you go into Spotify, you can get a free Spotify account and you look up movie music, like, you know, epic movie music. There's a lot of that music is kind of sad. Or I listen to a lot of Jackie Evancho. She's got a lot of kind of sad, melancholy music. And I just would listen to that sad music and just bawl. But you know what? That was such a release for me. And then the other thing is that I didn't have a lot of contact with anybody. And I had previously been I invited people to my house constantly in my old life, constantly had people over, constantly hosting things, going places, doing things. And all of a sudden I had nobody over. I had no contact with the outside world, but online I started meeting and getting to know people online. So I did have some people online, but the one person that I dumped to was my sister. Now it happened to work out because she was working for me at the time. I had an in-home business and she would come over almost every day and we would work together and she would listen. She was just a really, really good listener. And so, hopefully you have someone like that. If you don't, if you can find someone online that might be interested in just having phone conversations where you both sharing together, you could do that. But just because you don't want to go out and socialize right now, I think sometimes we think that's a bad thing. And we think, oh, I should be fixing this. I should be out there socializing. I should be getting my life together. Not when you're in the cocoon. No. You don't have to. This is a natural process. A butterfly doesn't go into the cocoon and then go, well, when should I come out? What should I do? How long will I be here? He just rests in there. And he knows that when the time is right, he is going to come out. And you know what? That's going to be the same with you. When the time is right, you will slowly start making your way out of that cocoon. So just be okay with being in the cocoon phase and do what you're supposed to do in that phase. Rest, heal, learn, grow, build your relationship with God. That's like a key relationship that really kind of gets kicked by the wayside, I think, because we start feeling like, where were you, God? Can I even trust you? Are you even listening? Is there even a God? You know, maybe, I mean, your whole faith is completely deconstructed during that time. That's okay. That's actually super, super healthy. So let it deconstruct. Let it fall apart. Go back and ask those hard questions. You will get stronger if you just be okay with letting things be not strong right now. And yeah,